Hey guys, welcome to another video of facing one of Levi Rosman, known as GothamChess favorite openings, the French. The French is a very annoying opening that starts with this move e4, e6, and black wants to hit our center with d5. Of course, I recommend to grab the center. Why not? 2 pawns at the center can't be bad. And after d5, you already have a pleasant choice to grab more space with e5. This is called the advanced variation, or play more solid with knight c3, which I think is a little bit easier to learn, because now when black plays knight f6, we're going to push the e-pawn to e5. This is called the Steinitz variation, but I actually think in addition to e5, inserting this bishop g5 move is even cooler. This is what I recommended in my white book, Chess Openings for White Explained. It does give black an extra option to play the McCutcheon, but rather than playing the typical e5 push in the McCutcheon, I'm going to recommend to simply take on d5. Okay, guys? So this is a little bit less studied line. If they take with e-pawn, they definitely are missing this bishop, so we can go for this rapid attack. Queen on f3, knight g2, and we're not worried about bishop takes, pawn takes. Pressure here is annoying. We can either play h3 castle kingside, or even consider our more ambitious choice with castling queenside. So I've used this setup with quite success. So the best try is to take with the queen. This is an old line, and here typically we're going to take with a tempo. They can either play gf or bishop takes c3. Either option is playable. If they take here, we have an extra option to protect the knight with knight g2 or queen d2. I like queen d2 myself. And after bishop takes, again, very pleasant queen takes, maintaining very solid pawn structure. Knight f3, bishop e2, castle kingside. White is a little bit better. Okay, this is my recommendation here. And if they insert bishop takes c3 tempo to ruin our structure, this is another classic double pawn fight. Which double pawns are better? I think this position is quite interesting. White has many different plans, such as knight f3. I kind of like knight e2 with an option of going knight f4 idea, and this is another playable position. But you may wonder, what if they played classic French style with bishop e7? Now I like the Steinitz even more, because strategically speaking, this is a bad piece, and f8 bishop was a better piece. We got rid of black's best bishop, and now we're going to grab that center. They prepare for c5. We're going to take knight c6, typically queen d2. They have two options, knight or queen. Typically knight is a little bit more popular, and here we can already castle queenside. This is a really cool double-edged type of position. And after b5, bishop can go to d3. And if b4, the beauty of this knight is that the knight wants to get rerouted to the d4 outpost. This is the dream position for white, and very easy to play. If black castles, where I get the beautiful setup, the knight on d4, and keep in mind, whenever they take on d3, you have two options, pawn takes or queen takes. In this case, I think queen takes is the better try. King is going to go to b1. Don't push these pawns. That's key. They're only going to make more weaknesses, right? And use this powerful knight to prepare the h-pawn storm or the g4 f5 storm. Finally, GothamChess himself has played this unusual plan. Let me go back to meet bishop g5 with d takes e. This is kind of resolving the central tension and then playing this bishop e7 move. Right now, the knight is under attack. We don't really want to take and trade everything on f6. So instead, I'm going to recommend bishop takes. Gf is the fighting choice. And this position is really interesting, right? It's a fight of the bishops against the knights, but black does have the slightly ruined structure. So I would recommend just to go for development. GothamChess likes f5 and a6, knowing as the most aggressive setup here. And then rather than queen d2, which I think is totally playable. I kind of like this queen e2 move. Really unusual move because it's blocking the bishop. But the point being is after b5, you get to castle. And then the idea is to have d5 next. You create an x-ray. We call this x-ray, the rook against the queen. And if bishop goes to b7, without hesitation, push the d-pawn. This is already close to losing position for black. Take it on d5 opens things up really nicely for us. Now we have this idea, queen e5 or knight d4. Both are looking pretty good to me. I would probably start with queen e5. And if they castle right into the attack. Knight takes d5. Now there is a huge threat on the bishop. They probably will take the knight. Rook takes, hits the queen. Queen e8, queen has to guard the bishop. And then we're going to dominate on the light squares. So the knight gets out, but the problem is black is getting mated. Either with bishop d3 or knight g5. I think bishop d3 is the simplest, and I just don't see how you can stop mate. Again, let's go back and review this one more time. So this, instead of the more common queen d2, we play queen e2, and we go for this major threat d5 push, probably on almost any move. Like bishop b7, so what? d5. So this is a nice threat discovery attack from the rook. They take, and then we execute this very powerful idea. Knight takes, bishop, rook takes, queen takes f5, and bishop d3. And this is how you can try to punish the French. Going all the way back, let's review it one more time. d4, d5, knight c3. Black's only other weapon that we haven't discussed is this super sharp winner. This one does take a little bit of time to get used to. Honestly, guys, if you don't want to learn anything, any sharp stuff after e5, you can just take and play exchange French style, where this bishop is typically misplaced. And remember what I said after knight f6, just go ahead and transpose to the McCutcheon with queen f3, knight g2 next. Very simple setup to play. Never worry about bishop takes, pawn takes, because that only strengthens your center. So that's the easiest shortcut to the whenever. Just simply take on d5 if you don't learn e5. So with that, you pretty much covered with every possible lines. After knight f6, I showed you instead of e5, I recommend bishop g5, which I think is a little bit easier to learn, and only play e5 here. Okay, and if they play d takes e, I show you this cool idea with queen e2, take, knight f3, knight back, and queen e2 with idea to castle. And finally, the main line is where they play bishop to e7. Now this is the kind of classical Steinitz variation with f4, and they go for c5 at some point. We take, of course, queen d2, castle long, and the key is to put the bishop on d3, and the knight lands on e2 and d4. So that is how you punish the French. Any questions about this?
Yeah, so I have a question about when white goes bishop g5. What if they
Yep.
would just play h6 in response and go g5 and just attack the bishop on g5 with the pawns?
All right, good question. So this is after bishop g5, h6 here. Yeah, so this is kind of like an approach. You're really posing the question, are you willing to part with the bishop pair, right? In chess, the bishop pair is a pretty sizable advantage. So when you take on f6, you better prove why this is good position for white. I recommend to take, and if they take with a pawn, these are called double pawns now, and then we're going to take and ruin the structure even more. These are double isolated pawns, okay? And then you just play for the same plan I showed you earlier. Here, castles, bishop here, knight g2.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.